Working on the dash now. This is fiberglass dash. We've just sort of rattle canned the inside of it, make it look a little bit cleaner. Got all the holes drilled. Switch plates will be up here. Gear indicator. Fuel shut off. Shift mechanism will come through. Some notches for the clutch line and the throttle cable. So got that all ready to go. It's wrapped in black. And next up, we'll start riveting things on. We got to rivet on the tabs for the hood that mounts to it, and then everything else will kind of get screwed on.
Now we've got the dash installed. You can see where everything's placed. We've got the 3 aluminum tabs riveted on. Those are the tabs that the hood will mount to. Up in the top right corner in this view, you see the switch plate. And just below that is the gear indicator. And then just below that is the red bus bar for all of our positive switched items. Below that is the Yamaha ignition box. A few things of note: we try to mount all of that stuff as far left as possible. Just general rule of thumb, trying to keep left side weight in the car as much as we can. Also, the ignition box is mounted in this orientation with the connectors pointing out to the side. Kind of rule of thumb on this one is not to mount with connectors pointing up, because water can kind of drip down the wires into the connector. All the connectors are sealed, so there shouldn't be any issues, but if there's ever an issue with a seal, water can get down into your connectors. So we try to mount the connectors sideways when we can, just to try to prevent some of that from happening. In the center is the puke can. So that's basically just to vent the engine, so oil can vent into that as needed. On the top left is the fuel shutoff valve. And then down below, you see the shift linkage coming through the dash. And then where the lower notches are, that's the clutch line and throttle cables coming through as well.
All right, we're gonna start doing some wiring. So we've got a lot of our wiring stuff out here ready to go. First piece will be the harness that basically connects to the ignition box. So this is the connector that will connect to the Yamaha ignition box. These are the pins and the seals that go into that connector. So sort of made some notes here of how we're gonna route the wiring, what's gonna connect to what, and what pins are assigned to what. So we're just gonna start creating this, like I said, starting from this connector. I'm just gonna start by making all these wires like 16 inches long. That's plenty of length, and then as I go to terminate the other end, we'll get those to the exact length that we want. First one will just be one of our black ground wires. Slide the seal over the insulation on the wire that's already been stripped. So these connectors basically will go like this, where you have, they'll get crimped around the seal and then also crimped around the wire. See if we can do this right. I don't actually have the proper crimper for this, but I think this one will work. There we go. Not beautiful, but that's tightly crimped around the wire, and the seal is there as well. It's going to be a black wire. It's going to come out of pin 8 on the connector. These connectors are marked on the back side. This is pin 8. Let's go in this direction. All right, so we've gone over the car and measured where some of these wires end up going and cut them all to the proper length. So now we're going to terminate some of these. So all 3 of these come out of this connection and go to a ground. So we're going to tie these together in a ring terminal that we'll use for a ground. This smaller ring terminal will go to our power source. Don't forget to put your shrink wrap on before you terminate. These are all going to be twist it together. I'm actually gonna solder this. I'll have to just crimp these, but I like to solder these. Seeing a lot of wires pop out of these cheap little terminals like this. Just gonna kind of squeeze it down with some of those. Then we'll put a nice bit of solder in there. But doesn't need to be a glob of solder, just enough. Get it to flow in there nicely. Get a nice solid joint there. So that wire is not coming out of that ring terminal now. Let it cool for a second and we'll shrink wrap it. So these last two are to a connector we have for the crank trigger. So I usually put a connector on the engine side for the crank trigger and for the alternator. That way if you're going to change an engine, you just have two connectors and you can then pull the engine out without having to go back and retrace all your wiring. These are similar to the other terminals we were using. Basically go together the same way. So that one crimped with the seal in place. This is the housing for these. These are just called weather pack, kind of a generic little, simple to use, but water sealed connector. So we've got green. Green is going to pin A and white is going to B. So green is going to A. These are marked on the face here. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but there's an A and a B. Let's just pop in. And this just pops over. That's done. So that's basically the wiring from the ignition box to power, to the coils, to the crank trigger, and to ground. All right, we've got most of the wiring in place now. So our switch panel from Quick Car, our switched power comes down to this bus bar. We use that to connect all of our other positive switched items. So the gear indicator, the alternator gets run through that, and power going down to the fuel pump also comes through that, and power to our Micron, which we're using for a dash. So that's all there. Got a connector here for the coils. The rest of the wiring will run down this way to keep it away from the drive shaft, and it comes down to our starter solenoid. So starter solenoid will have a positive lead from the battery, and then a lead coming off to the starter itself. And then we'll run the main power back up to that main power switch. At the fuel pump side, we just got a single line connected here for the positive, and then it's just grounded here. All the other grounds are running to the other side, down in that direction. And on the front side, pretty clean and simple, just the switch plate, which has our ignition switch, our starter button, and then the accessory switch for the fuel pump, and the gear indicator telling the driver what gear the car's in, and our Micron dash.